Nkosazana Clarice Dlamini Zuma is a trailblazer in the upliftment and empowerment of women across the African continent. Her career as an activist and politician is testimony to her indestructible and courageous spirit. She was born on January 27, 1949 in KwaZulu-Natal, a time when black women's career expectations did not go beyond domestic work. She, however, was not to be limited. She completed her high school studies at Amanzimtoti Training College in 1967. After a 4-year gap, she started her studies in zoology and botany at the University of Zululand in 1971. She obtained her BSc degree and started her medical studies at the University of Natal, where her involvement with the struggle began. Dr. Dlamini Zuma became an active underground member of the ANC. She was also a member of the South African Students' Organization and was elected as its deputy president in 1976. During the same year, she fled into exile, completing medical studies at the University of Bristol in the UK in 1978. After the 1994 elections, Dr. Dlamini Zuma was appointed as Minister of Health in the cabinet of then-President Nelson Mandela. During her tenure, she desegregated the health system and championed the radical health reforms which introduced access to free basic health care. In 1999, then-President Thabo Mbeki appointed Dr. Dlamini Zuma as Minister of Foreign Affairs. In this role, she actively championed South Africa's foreign policy which centered on the promotion of human rights, stability, peace, collective development and advancement of this continent. It was during her tenure as Minister of Foreign Affairs that peace and stability was achieved in Burundi and the DRC, for example, and it was during her time that the African Union was launched in 2002. In 2009, she was appointed Minister of Home Affairs and brought about radical change in the department, which subsequently achieved a clean audit for the first time in many years in 2011. In July 2012, Dr. Dlamini Zuma was elected Chairperson of the African Union Commission by the heads of state in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. She is the first woman to lead the Continental Organization, including its predecessor, the Organization of African Unity. This was a major achievement in the sense that for the first time since the formation of the Organization for African Unity, which became the African Union, a woman, and indeed a candidate of the southern region, was successfully elected to this high post. Her Excellency Dr. Dlamini Zuma is doing exceptional life's work to the cause of freedom for the people of South Africa and the development and consolidation of our democracy in the quest to create a better life for all Africans. Nkosazana Clarice Dlamini Zuma, née Dlamini, born January 27, 1949, sometimes referred to by her initials NDZ, is a South African politician, medical doctor, and former anti-apartheid activist. A long-standing member of the African National Congress, ANC, she currently serves as minister in the Presidency responsible for women, youth, and persons with disabilities and is the Chancellor of the University of Limpopo. Dlamini Zuma was born and educated in the former Natal province, where, as a student, she became involved in the Black consciousness movement through the South African Students' Organization. Between 1976 and 1990, she lived in exile outside South Africa, primarily in the United Kingdom and Swaziland, where she practiced medicine and engaged in ANC activism. Since 1994, Dlamini Zuma has served in the cabinet of every post-apartheid South African president. She was Minister of Health under President Nelson Mandela, and Minister of Foreign Affairs for 10 years under Presidents Thabo Mbeki and President Kgalema Motlanthe. During the first term of President Jacob Zuma, she was Minister of Home Affairs, in which portfolio she was credited with turning around a dysfunctional department. Under President Cyril Ramaphosa, she served as Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation, with responsibility for the National Planning Commission, before becoming Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, in which capacity she had a prominent and controversial role in regulating South Africa's lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic. She was absent from the South African government between October 2012 and January 2017, when she served as the chairperson of the African Union Commission, making her the first woman to lead either that organization or its predecessor, the Organization of African Unity. Her tenure in that position was also controversial. She has been a member of the ANC's National Executive Committee since the early 1990s, and has twice campaigned unsuccessfully for leadership positions in the party. In 2007, at the ANC's 52nd National Conference, Motlanthe defeated her to win the deputy presidency, while at the 54th National Conference in 2017, she narrowly lost the ANC presidency to Ramaphosa, the current incumbent. Nkosazana Clarice Dlamini was born on January 27, 1949 to a Zulu family in Natal. Her father, Willie Broadquiva, was a teacher, whose brother Stephen Dlamini was an activist in the African National Congress, ANC. Her mother Rose was a homemaker. The eldest of 8 children, Dlamini Zuma completed high school in Amanzimtoti at Adams College, a mission school attended by many ANC stalwarts. She matriculated in 1967. Wanting to become a lawyer but acquiescing in her father's eagerness that she become a doctor, she earned a BSc degree in zoology and botany from the University of Zululand in 1971, and then went to the University of Natal to study medicine. While there, she became an active member of South African Students' Organization, a black consciousness grouping, and was elected as its deputy president in 1976. With her political activity attracting police attention, she went into exile later in 1976. She therefore finished her medical studies in the United Kingdom, graduating with an MBCHB from the University of Bristol in 1978. She was chairperson of the ANC youth section in Britain between 1977 and 1978, and in that capacity often travelled elsewhere in Europe. After she graduated, Dlamini Zuma worked in England for 2 years, at Bristol's Frenchay Hospital and Berkshire's Canadian Red Cross Memorial Hospital, while serving on the British Regional Political Committee of the ANC. She then spent 5 years in Swaziland, where she worked as a pediatric officer at the Mbabane Government Hospital. She met her future husband, Umkhonto we Sizwe activist Jacob Zuma, while embedded in the ANC underground in Swaziland. In 1985, Dlamini Zuma returned to the United Kingdom to complete a diploma in tropical child health from Liverpool University's School of Tropical Medicine. In subsequent years, she continued her work in pediatrics, helped found and directed the Health Refugee Trust, a British non-governmental organization, and then returned briefly to Africa in 1989, to work for the ANC Health Department in Lusaka, Zambia. She returned to South Africa when the ANC was unbanned by the National Party government in 1990, signaling the beginning of the country's transition to non-racial democracy. During the Convention for a Democratic South Africa, CODESA, negotiations in 1992, she was part of the Gender Advisory Committee. In the transition period, she also served on the Executive Committee and Health Committee of the ANC Southern Natal Branch, and as a research scientist at South Africa's Medical Research Council in Durban. In 1994, after South Africa's first election under universal suffrage, Dlamini Zuma was appointed as Minister of Health in the cabinet of President Nelson Mandela, where she continued the work of her predecessor, Rena Venter, in racially desegregating the health system and broadening state anti-tobacco measures. In 1999, Dlamini Zuma introduced the Tobacco Products Amendment Bill, which made it illegal to smoke in public buildings. Her term also coincided with the beginning of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in South Africa. Despite Dlamini Zuma's history of HIV/AIDS activism, including a stint on the National AIDS Coordinating Committee in 1992 and a period as Deputy Chairperson of the United Nations AIDS Programme, UNAIDS, in 1995, she and her ministry were criticized for publicly supporting Virodine, a quack remedy for HIV/AIDS. In January 2012, while still heading the Ministry of Home Affairs, Dlamini Zuma contested the position of Chairperson of the African Union, Commission. In doing so, she broke an unwritten rule that major African powers do not put forward candidates for oppositions. This angered many states, leading to a deadlock in the first election, despite the backing for Dlamini Zuma's presidency provided by the 15 states comprising the Southern African Development Community. As a consequence of the failure to secure a two-thirds majority of the vote, incumbent Jean Ping's term was extended by 6 months, until a second election on July 15 at the 19th session of the O Assembly elected Dlamini Zuma to the position. The vote was largely divided along language lines, Francophone states against Anglophone states, with the latter bloc supporting Dlamini Zuma's candidacy. Dlamini Zuma was chairperson until January 30, 2017, when she was replaced by Chadian Foreign Minister Moussa Faki. Dlamini Zuma was unpopular and disliked among O officials for her apparent aloofness and absenteeism. She was criticized for filling her advisory office and security detail with South African nationals, and for spending much of her time in South Africa instead of at O headquarters in Addis Ababa, reinforcing perceptions of South Africa as an insular nation. The Agenda 2063 plan spearheaded by Dlamini Zuma was criticized as quixotic and unrealistic. Her leadership as chairperson was considered a disappointing failure, although she was acknowledged for the managerial improvements she made. This included her insistence on professionalism, which enhanced the O's reputation. It was taken more seriously as a result of her interventions. She was also an advocate for increased gender representation in the O, which further exacerbated her popularity issues. Furthermore, in a room of stuffy old men talking about guns and tanks, she brought in concepts like gender, human rights, and food security. She was also credited with the politically courageous drive to suspend Egypt from the O after Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's 2013 military coup, although she did not condemn other authoritarian power grabs elsewhere in Africa. Dlamini Zuma was married to former President Jacob Zuma between 1982 and 1998. They had 4 daughters together: Misholoza, born 1982, Gugulethu Zumankube, born 1984, who married the son of Zimbabwean politician Welshman Nkube, Nakuthula Nomekwi, born 1987, and Thuthukiel, born 1989, who was controversially appointed Chief of Staff in the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services in 2014. Dlamini Zuma divorced Zuma in June 1998 over irreconcilable differences. Dlamini Zuma's younger sister, Hlobisile, is also an ANC member and serves as member of the KwaZulu-Natal legislature. Dlamini Zuma received the Order of Luthuli in gold in 2013. The same year, she was listed as one of New African magazine's top 100 most influential Africans, and in 2015 she was featured as one of the BBC's 100 women. In 2019, she was appointed the Chancellor of the University of Limpopo, a non-residential and largely ceremonial position. Thank you for watching this video.